Yale Avenue and Chapel.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start the ARPA Committee meeting tonight, February 1st, 2023. All stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, take a roll call, please.
Councilman Gary Donovan.
Councilman Gary Donovan, Councilman at Large, present.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, Council at Large.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani.
Ron Quagliani, Council at Large, present.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky is absent. Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite. Councilwoman Sarah Akbarali is absent. Councilman Mitchell Galagnano.
Councilman Mitchell Galagnano, 4th District, present.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton, 5th District, present.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker is absent. Councilman Victor Boris is absent. Councilman Robert Bruno.
Councilman Robert Bruno, 9th District, present.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone, 10th District, present.
And Chairman Peter Massaro.
Chairman Peter Massaro, President, 6th District Councilman. I'd like to thank all the council members that can show up tonight. The clerk will also read the call of the meeting.
West Haven City Council, ARPA Committee meeting, February 1st, notice agenda. In accordance with Rule Number 12 of the rules governing the actions of the City Council, Chairman Massaro has called an ARPA Committee meeting to be held at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. The meeting will be held at the City of West Haven, 355 Main Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, Eleanor, would you like to start your presentation?
I would love to. Thank you. I'm going to have to ask you to turn to the printed out version of the slides due to our technical difficulties this evening, if you don't mind. It's on page 38, or just after page 38 when the numbers stop, is where the slide presentation begins. And the first one's called Updating the Vision, Implementing the Plan. And first of all, I'd like to say that it's a great honor to be able to present this material that so many people have had and been asked to have some input into creating. So we're not gonna try to belabor you with a whole big lecture on arts management. This is about getting unstuck, creating options, and that's why I'm here tonight. So I really appreciate your time. So the first slide shows a picture of the building that we're talking about, and we're talking 304 Center Street, of course. And if people haven't been there in a while, or perhaps have never been there, the second and third slides show the interior of the main floor spaces. The first one on the left is from standing inside the main floor, looking out at what's considered the front door, facing Center Street. The one to the right used to be the kitchen, I believe, in the Masonic Lodge, and is up to the left of the stage. And then the third one is standing in front of the front door, looking back over all that gorgeous expansiveness. Some people look at vacant spaces like that and see decay or blight. Many creative people see possibilities and enjoy the rawness and don't want it to get overbuilt. Anyway, the planning timeline on the next page is just a quick snapshot of how we got from the SAG plan in 2011 that was referenced in the last meeting by Councilman Quagliani to today, to the version of the plan that I'm presenting. After Yale and University of New Haven signaled their intent to remain involved in the project, an awful lot has changed, not only in the environment, but in West Haven, and we're not frozen in time. We're trying to respond and look at intelligent possibilities for inputs and outputs, and what not only artists, but cultural groups and different cultures of all kinds, neighbors learning about each other's culture, communities, and creative entrepreneurs in the business side of the creative economy need today, which is very different than it was 10 or 15 years ago. Tonight's presentation is structured in 4 sections, and each section has 4 bullets, just so you know kind of what your input, or I'll try to go through it as fast as possible. But the planning timeline took us to 2016 when a consultant was hired, and that's when the West Haven Center for the Arts became Arts West CT. And I think that's a piece that people miss or don't understand, or maybe, just, didn't. There's different ways that records get kept, and I think West Haven Center for the Arts becoming Arts West CT, that was the branding name. West Haven Center for the Arts was kind of like a place saver name in the first earlier plan, and then the branded name was adopted in 2016, before me. And then in 2018 and 19, citywide open studios took place at Yale West. I don't have to go over all that, but that's when artists started seeing each other, meeting each other, saying, oh, you're a West Haven, so am I. And I was invited to host a roundtable to gather input on what Arts West CT could look like and be like and do for the community. So then the state bond funding got secured. The city put out an RFP for the architect. We did the cultural assets mapping plan, which was funded, no cost to the city and volunteer time. We did another roundtable, and here you have it. So partners and stakeholders, we need to account for the status of those academic partnerships, which were so very important in the original funding. And I can tell you that pilot projects are underway with the University of New Haven, who attended the 2020 roundtable and has been involved since then through the Department of Communications, Film, and Media Studies. It's not, the administration of the university, but that department has been able to access funds for Arts West CT and has really jumped in with both feet to be an enthusiastic partner. They're talking about building a course around following and documenting from a journalistic point of view the work of West Haven creatives. Other existing partnerships, of course, Yale University. There is a marketing professional from Yale on the Arts West CT board, and some contacts at Yale West have been contacted as recently as July to a positive wait and see, but thank you, it's good to be in touch kind of response that could be followed up on once there's a clear signal to send to the folks at Yale West campus. That's a whole other thing that wasn't even on the radar when these plans were originally created, was the fact that Yale has a presence here in West Haven with the Yale West campus. The West Haven Council on the Arts that was in the old plan is not operating currently. I believe the legal status on the Secretary of State's website is officially dissolved. That has been confirmed with a former officer. We honor and respect the efforts and goodwill of different arts groups working together. Some of the people I'm mentioning, I'm turning around and they actually slipped in, so let me just smile and wave at everybody right now. West Haven Council on the Arts, yes. So there's not like different factions of that anymore. I think it's safe to say. Some new promising directions for partnership is with the health agencies. Hi, Heather. Health agencies who are seeing arts as a mainstream type of intervention to bring behavioral health higher and help people function and restore what was lost from COVID. That's with everybody from early childhood on up to our senior citizens. The arts is accepted as a path for doing that. And Bridges Healthcare has also jumped in with both feet. I met with Jason at the Young Adult Services office on Elm Street about more state funding that he's able to unlock that goes directly not only to Arts West CT, but directly to the pockets of the artists that he values and wants to support. They also have a recording studio not too far from 304 Center Street that he said does not have to be exclusive to clients. It can be rentable for a very low-cost fee to supplement, say, musicians who are working nearby. So then you start to see and feel the idea of a whole kind of ecosystem. Of course, there's other interested parties, schools, funders, arts organizations outside of West Haven, in our neighboring cities and towns, and various kinds of community groups, from West Haven United to the Child Development Center, and I won't go over the whole list because they're in your packet. But the point is, all of these dots on the map are existing cultural assets. There's a cultural assets map that lives on the city website that I got funding for from the Neighborhood Leadership Program, and the state Office of the Arts said that's great. That's what you would need to do to create a cultural district, and a cultural district means eventual funding should you wish to do that. But having a center or a critical focal point creates that density that you need to have a cultural district. Cultural district, by the way, wouldn't have to just be one neighborhood. We can create different centers of activity and connect them, but that's another story. The next picture just shows how the center looks up against the other cultural assets from the outside, to imagine the journey of walking around downtown and having it look and feel differently than it does today. Now we're getting into operation and governance. I've updated the organizational chart based on what was in the other plan, and the way the activation of the nonprofit organization that SAG wanted created, and that Catherine Bradshaw helped name Arts West CT, would be right on, just following those plans that are outlined. It would be Arts West CT underneath the city with some type of operating agreement, and then having our fiscal agent standing at the ready if a not-for-profit status is needed for funding purposes. We have their blessing. Winter Marshall, who's the interim director there, grew up in West Haven, would love to see this happen. And I spoke with her again yesterday and reaffirmed that. Then entrepreneurship and tourism is a very important aspect to making everything work. We have now on the scene our Regional Chamber of Commerce, Simon McDonald, who's not only, going to include us on the steering committee for marketing joint tourism initiatives with West Haven and Milford, but really wants to have an on-the-ground presence in West Haven, like part of the footprint. And so key to the use of this center, from my point of view, I think in terms of I hate to admit this, but I will to you, what's the least amount of input we can put somewhere in a building to start generating revenue and community benefit and get it to do what we want it to do. And that's what Project Storefronts was all about, that, occupied vacant storefronts in New Haven that I directed for 3 years. And this is kind of like that, but on a bigger scale. And it's kind of nice to have everybody under one roof and not be running around a whole city trying to monitor all these different projects. So anyway, the entrepreneurship and tourism would be manifested space-wise in the form of a welcome center that the Milford Chamber of Commerce would be part of the operating team running, and that could include mentorship and the whole business side, like I said, of arts, and also goal setting. I mean, before you even get to start a business, there's the goal setting part of youth development that is so beneficial and so needed now. So that's all kind of a stream of activity that we would like to see, wherever it happens, but it could happen here. Then underneath in the green, just to keep track of my time here, underneath in the green are the different kind of stations of activity or sources of staffing support. I won't go into all of them, just know that I'm available to answer any questions about them, and that it has been thought out to kind of cover the bases, but not cover the bases like we're going to compete with Westville Music Bowl. I mean, that's, that wasn't even on the scene originally when this was going to be a big performing arts space with national acts. We don't need to do that now. We have signs directing people to those places. This is more for the community in its vision at this time. Part 2 is economic sustainability. You have a pretty detailed market analysis in the packet. I won't go point for point, but just to say the real estate market is pushing people into 06516 from both sides. And with it, it's bringing people who have talent and discretionary income. And there's people with established careers in the arts and international reputations who are choosing to buy their first home here. And then what's here for them? And how can they contribute and bring value through connections as neighbor, and how can we get to know them. Affordable rehearsal space. There are West Haven groups like Madame Thalia and Fuse Theater that have West Haven addresses that can't spend their money on rehearsal space in West Haven because we don't have the right type of venues. We're artist rich but venue poor, as the cultural map showed. So there is a market need. I mean, these are checks being written, but they're not going into our local economy. We have a need for a youth center, a senior center, and frankly, the burden of outdoor events. I mean, it's fine to say we've got these beautiful parks, we can do more arts and culture, and that's absolutely true. I spent $900 on the police for Make Music Day. We had 105 toddlers. And, you know, it gets to be a burden for, and not only for the organizers, but for the city to have to deal with the overtime and cleanup that is much simplified if things are indoors in a controlled environment under one roof kind of thing. So the business model is, if you can envision it, I'm sorry you can't see it, a welcome center where people can drop in, walk in and get brochures, information about West Haven, see a video monitor. Sponsors could have video material showing about different programs. Neighborhoods other than downtown could be visible on that monitor. So it's a portal to the whole city. And flexible gathering and event spaces, studio spaces for makers and entrepreneurs, and then a big wide open space still, because it's a pretty big space, for camps, classes, performances, events, and rehearsals. And this is all just on the main floor. It's tight, but we can kind of jostle around each other and make it work. So there's an earned revenue. Nonprofit arts organizations structure their budget in terms of earned and contributed revenue. When I started in this field, it was about 50-50 was a good ratio. Now it's like different. You've got to get way more earned income. So I'm just trying to like think that grants is gravy and the main sustainability has to come from the earned income. If we had all three floors to work with, we could have, you know, big time rentals of a upstairs theater, day rentals in the big open space, and then incubator for creators in residence in the basement. But on the first floor, we can have 6 rentable studios and the Welcome Center with sponsorships. And against the expense sheet that Mr. Carney estimated for operating costs to run the building, and that's based on the whole building, but I'm not prorating it. I'm just saying, let's just make sure we can cover. Based on those costs, rent from the first floor alone, main floor, could be very pared down but doable in a kind of a startup mode. And I've got all that breakdown in your packet. So on the fundraising side, the quote-unquote gravy side, although grants really are very important, they certainly would be important to Arts West CT, because I haven't discussed the expenses on the program side, only the operating side. On the program side, to develop things, of course, we would need to get grants. So for that, we would cultivate and engage the board to look at their networks of individual donations. We had a successful crowdfunding campaign earlier this year. We would, in Q2 of this year, I mean, before a building even, you know, starts to look real, we could campaign around the cultural dining guide that's in progress and talk about how an arts center is going to stimulate the restaurant scene. And that, again, is something, arts and restaurants were both some of the most affected by COVID. So to use COVID money for something that helps both seems very much to the spirit. There's the development of sponsorship packets, and then on the grant application side, I mean, there's just a systematic way that you kind of do that. And I don't need to belabor it, but how would we actually use the space? The main floor, as you can see here in this schematic, has some suggested uses in a color-coded way of looking at, there's 2 little framed-in rooms in the very front of the building to help visualize, and I show them in that very first picture of what the inside of the space looks like. We'd basically be replicating those 2 framed-in rooms, like 2 more deep. So instead of 2 little rooms by the front door, it would be 6 little rooms by the front door with a nice wide aisle, like a 10-foot wide bay in between them. So you've got wall space. The studio occupant could have their own little exhibit in front of their door. You could stand back a little bit to actually get some perspective on it. And they would have their own entrance, maybe through a keypad. I don't like the idea, personally, of of not having proper security, as has been mentioned by some board members. It's important, but it's, there's ways to do it, and I would suggest having a keypad on the front door that the artists who are, or creatives, makers, photographers, printmakers, business people of all kinds, Etsy shop owners, could have the keypad code, punch it in and get in through that front door. Then the public would be coming in through that side door, which would be the accessibility door. And I also love the idea of the accessibility door being the main door for the public, so nobody's a second-class citizen. It's not, it's just, that's the door. And what's nice about that building is it faces the front, but it's off to the side. So if you see, it says accessible entrance with elevator. Going, basically, you have to kind of go into the space and then loop back into the Welcome Center. So it's a little awkward, but certainly, artists have made do with much, much worse. But again, I want to keep including the community because it's the arts to create a community platform. It's a very different vibe and a different mindset than I think people might have when they're picturing, whatever they're picturing. And I think the artists who are here tonight would attest to that. I mean, making good opportunities for community, mentoring youth, teaching marketable skills to people who may not be going to college, which is, college is not a predominant path here, in contrast to some of our neighbors. That's all very important and doable, even at a small scale in this one slice of activity. And the performances and event space could be configured as cabaret style. It's 80 seats in rows with an aisle. You've got, like, WPKN has their vinyl every year. Martha Lewis, who organizes it, was saying, do you know of any, spaces? And I should have told him about West River Hall, I forgot. But these kinds of events, collectability, memorabilia types of events, to be right downtown is really kind of nice and sticky. It's very convenient. People only have to park once. And again, it's happening, so why not have it happen here? The next page just shows happy artists working in their studios, some examples of a welcome center, and the kind of aesthetic that people seem not to mind enough to agree on is a kind of an urban, minimalist, stuff you might find at Munger's Market in Bridgeport, some recycled, upcycled, sleek look to it that doesn't get in the way and kind of enhances the rawness of the space. Not that we wouldn't put drywall and make sure nobody gets tetanus, because that's important too. The next page is just the actual floor plan as best as we could, because actually an artist did this for me before the pandemic. And I don't know if anybody here knows this, but in February of 2020, Tom McCarthy and I got a quote from a company called AmRamp about putting a ramp on the back of the building. We were told there is enough room, and we were retold recently whether it's ADA compliant or IBC compliant. They're waiting to hear back from the city about which one. There is enough room back there to do it, and it's and that was kind of like the real minimum viable thing would be slap a ramp on the back, and we were going to do an installation of veterans artwork. There's a veteran who has other veterans paint on their uniforms and make works of art out of their uniforms, and you install it from a fishing line, and it makes this very striking, ethereal, moving. It would just be fantastic in that space. So the vision was, and we had money allocated for this and everything, was to have that artist put that installation in, do some engagement with our veterans here, and then even if people couldn't go in the space, have a peek-in exhibition at the end of the Memorial Day parade where people get dropped off right in front of that building, and it would be commemorative and very much in the spirit of the occasion and tying in with other civic things. So I'm sorry that didn't get to happen, because just like 2 weeks later I caught COVID really, really bad, and I had not one but two health department people calling me every day, and everything went kaplooey, but we're back. So building costs, again, the minimum viable renovation. I don't have access to a line item construction budget. I know everybody would like one, and I think one could be built with some getting in the shared conversation. But what I do know is that Woodbridge is spending $2 million on turning an old firehouse that burned down at one point into an art center, and that has an elevator. So our elevator situation is a little funky. I think it's called like split stop or something would be one recommendation. It was the recommendation from the Sapienza plan in 2016, but even that on today's dollars runs like $175,000 for a split stop elevator. So the ramp, even if it's double, even if the ramp is double what it was in 2020, it would still be like 30, 36. I don't know. I'm just saying, I mean, I know enough to know that's what people have told me. And the consensus among all the architects in my network that I have access to is that 2.5 million for a main floor is more than enough, should be more than enough to do what these simplified plans outline and lightly finish the basement so that it can be used for temporary storage or other kinds of things, and the details are in your packets. The nature of a public-private partnership is tricky. The equity lens that gets put on who gets access to the space and how it gets, you know, who gets welcomed and invited and, you know, feel like they belong, that's all very, very important. It's very important to me. Not being able to finish the whole space at once could be looked at as a constraint. I know it's not how a lot of people like to work, but it is how a lot of buildings do get renovated. And the future build out of the top floor is, I don't know if we're even going to get to that tonight, but it's been thought about. Let me just say that. Neighbor relations is super important. That is a residential neighborhood. I mean, it's mixed, of course. It's commercial. You've got commercial neighbors and you've got residential neighbors. And so reaching out to the residential neighbors is something that I would consider a constraint, because you want to get past that gate if you're going to do anything. You know, you want to play nice. I mean, I want to play nice with my neighbors wherever I am, working or living. So that's something. And then the idea of creating pull into the space. One strategy for that in arts audience engagement is having time-limited or time-based kinds of engagements. And one way to do that is to make sure that the artists who access the studios come in, get hooked up with resources to support their goals, and they're moving and growing professionally, and ideally would be taking out, I would consider it a wonderful KPI if they graduate from that space and go on to take out their own commercial leases in vacant space elsewhere in the city. And that's how you create this kind of pull that really drives economic development. And I've seen it happen and been a part of it happening elsewhere. And it would be just a dream to be able to do it here. Of course, there's that municipal fleet that would have to be relocated, but that's a totally minor detail. Maybe not for other people, but the construction budget, again, we're talking about getting to the 2.5 by the 1.5 million in state bond funding plus 1 million in federal funds from the ARPA Act. I'm just going to put it out there because we're not fighting for 3.5. 3.5, it looks, feels, sounds like a lot and needs to be to scale. But frankly, there's no other projects in that packet that address the downtown. And abandoning it completely seems not only unwise, but I mean, not like personally, but just like generally, globally kind of unkind, especially if the COVID money is supposed to help economically sectors that have been hurt. Why wouldn't, you know, you really want to do something, have people see something very different in your downtown? I mean, 30 years from now, who remembers what pothole got filled in front of their house 30 years ago? But you might remember bringing a kid to an event, meeting a friend for a special occasion, having a memorable day in another city, and that's where we're talking about building something that we can really be proud of in 30 years. So there is a balance for this project in the city account that has been documented, and that's $331,000 is in the city account for this building project. It doesn't have to be for capital. I have a recommendation about it, and it's not to spend it on, you know, frivolous things. It's to put it into a separate account for maintenance of the building that would be earning interest in a fund at the community foundation or wherever, whatever's legal. We've got legal guys here who could help figure out where to put it so that it's there when, not if, when the building needs to get repaired, when it has an issue. The taxpayers don't have to feel like, oh my God, you know, it's stressful enough having your own furnace breakdown with a cold snap coming. You don't want to feel like there's this big, wide open, gaping thing that's going to be a liability. But it is going to be a liability if it sits there any longer. And highest and best use, we can just, let's have a conversation about highest and best use. I don't think there's a whole lot of inputs that we would need to start feeling differently about that whole corner. And the restaurateurs that are closest to walkability to that building are already doing it. That corner looks great. There's, Jerry's is open for dinner now, Moby Dick's is right there. Moby Dick's and Jerry's are the two closest establishments, and that corner looks great. I'd love to see that all over the city. So, earned revenue, you've got the rentals at 10 to 12,000 a month, you've got sponsorships to round out the operating budget, and you've got contributed revenue to cover the programming expenses. Recommended next steps, socialize this plan with neighbors, take council action, review a draft operating agreement, or if all else failed, if this is just too much of a headache and your constituents just are screaming and this building is just whatever, or there's some other plan that's better for the highest and best use of that building, not to have it just sit there because we don't want to deal with it, but if there's a genuine other highest and best use for that building, then you can still support arts and culture out of the ARPA fund. Other cities and towns are doing it. We saw this coming down the pike, and Rosa DeLore's office actually reached out to me and said, make sure you know that arts and culture is right in the middle of ARPA, and there's programming funds. So why not take that $1 million? You could park it with our fiscal agent, the Greater New Haven Arts Council, which is a trained, professional, designated regional service organization that does re-granting. So they could do a re-granting fund, put that money directly to arts and culture in the 06516 zip code. The city could maintain the parameters on who's eligible to access that funding and just let them do it. But, I mean, let's have a discussion about the building. Let's open our minds, like Dorinda said, State Representative Borer said when we had the roundtable in 2022 at the high school. She said we need to keep our minds open, keep listening to each other. We're going on this journey together. We don't exactly know where we're going to end up, but we need to give each other the grace and goodwill to keep moving forward. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eleanor. Anybody have any questions for the council? Councilman Donovan.
Yes. First of all, Eleanor, I want to thank you and everyone that was involved in putting this together. I was always for an arts center, and I am still for an arts center.
I'm going to sit next to you, Ken. Is that okay?
I think the plan is very good, much better than I thought, and using the one floor is key. Not, pushing to get the whole building, because that probably would not have happened, right, to do that. And you start with one floor. Down the road, we work on the second floor if possible, or whatever. Now, the income, if everything comes to fruition, you're saying the income from that building would be $12,000 a month,
Yes.
roughly?
Yes. I think it says 10 in one place and 12 in another. I'd probably split the
So
difference.
how
on
about
that,
if we
but
go to
thank you,
11,000,
yes.
right?
It's
So
enough,
we'll go,
it's enough to cover the operating expenses estimated by Mr. Carney.
oh, that was my next question to you, Ken. So that would cover that. So that should be sustainable itself.
And that's based on the 15 by 15 studio space, which feels, we were just in there yesterday to kind of get a feel, because one thing I wasn't sure about was, does 15 by 15 really feel like enough space for somebody not to be like compressed? And it does, it's nice, there's natural light in there. The walls wouldn't even have to go all the way up to the ceiling. Like, the walls could stop, like they do in some places, because we may want to reconfigure the space later. I mean, like,
Right.
flexibility is not a bad thing. Even knowing that you're temporary is something, I mean, I just think that the studios could easily generate $1,000 a month in a combination
Mhm.
of artists renting them for like a 6-month lease at a time, but also people just need, they're trying to make an Instagram reel. They want a nice clean space that has cameras already set up that they could rent for 2 hours for $50. Now, if you multiply 2 hours for $50 through even a fraction of days of the month, you still get to that number. You still get past that number, so that's
Right.
why.
No, I get that. And the cameras and stuff, where would those come from?
That's Arts West CT, that's on the program
got-
side.
okay.
That's like, oh, we wanna have a music themed room, we wanna pull the printmaking equipment. Do you know there's printmaking equipment in storage from the other building that got torn down at the Haven, the West Cove Studio? Had a
Okay.
printmaking center. I'd love to pull a piece of that history back into this kind
Okay.
of space.
As
So,
long as
yeah,
we're not out
that's
purchasing
program.
brand
That's
new
what I mean by the
right.
difference, that's a great example of the
Gotcha.
difference between operating and program. Operating is keeping the lights on, program is giving a kid a camera who wants to take a picture.
And Ken, this be more for you. So the 2.5, the one, say we decide to go with the 1 million from the ARPA money?
I brought an analysis for you tonight.
Yep,
I'm gonna
okay.
share that
We'll catch that
shows
later.
Different points you could look at.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted, so I'll ask that question later then, I guess, with that. Other than that, no, thank you very much, and thank everyone that was involved with it. I applaud everybody here that did that. Thank you.
Anyone else in the council like to answer questions?
I would just like to say thank you, Eleanor. You know, I went there yesterday, so I was impressed with the building. I had never been in it.
You wanted it to be a haunted house.
Yeah, I did.
I like it, Si. You'll get a sponsor for that?
We could probably make a lot of money off a haunted house in there, that's for sure. It probably has some spirit in there. I'm sure Mr. Mullins knows that. So, but yes, this is a great comprehensive plan. This is awesome. This is something that I think the council needed, because we hadn't seen any, we have to have something tangible, I guess. And most people do, right? If you just say something, it doesn't work, so I just wanted to thank you on it.
Well, thanks for
Awesome.
asking over and over for what you wanted and needed, because you maybe finally got it.
So, thank you again.
No? Councilman,
Oh, I went yesterday also, and I could really visualize your dream. I think it's a very great plan, and I'm for it. I really don't have a question. I just wanted to say great job.
Thanks. Thank you, that means a lot.
Eleanor, thank you for the presentation. So, I'm personally not really focused on the asset, the building. I'm focused on the ability to establish a space for arts in the city of West Haven, preferably in the center. So again, I'm gonna go back to, you know, what I've been beating the drum on. So, and I appreciate the conceptual plan that you have, but how much startup capital does your organization have
Well, our
currently?
fiscal agent has over $1 million in assets, and they're the fiscal agent that would be responsible for any kind of a pass-through funds. Arts West CT has about 10 times more than we had when Mr. Carney asked me that same question a few months ago as a result of some successful fundraising, and we do have the fundraising plan of a lot of things to apply for.
Yeah, I guess
So, yeah.
just to give an example, so this building, another building, it's open, you all are in there operating as, is it Arts West CT? Is that what it
Yes,
is now?
That is what it is.
Arts West CT.
Yes.
And for some reason, the MOUs didn't work out. Who's gonna cover the expenses if in fact your revenue falls short of your monthly expectations?
Well, if you need, like, if you're talking about a cushion, I mean, that's a goal, and that would be a timeline, you know, if we have to prove a kind of a get through a fundraising gate or something, you know, I'm open to negotiating that. It's like, how many months would you need us to have in the bank for that to look good or feel good? I mean, and how long would we have to raise it? I feel optimistic about the number of sources we have, the number of blessings we've gotten from people who do have access to funds. So I'm not saying we're not still in startup mode, but the lists of potential prospects who would be interested in renting and needing space. You heard from two the other day up here at this podium saying, I would write a check right now if that space was available. I mean, how many names like that would you need to have on a list to feel more confident? I mean, those are obstacles or points of negotiation that I'd be perfectly comfortable talking about.
Yeah, I don't think it's about names on a list that would make me feel confident. If in fact we get to that point, we're gonna have a legal operating agreement that's gonna identify what
Yeah.
the responsibility of Arts West CT is and what the responsibility of what the city is.
Right.
And I'm having the conversation now because I don't want any misconceptions. In my mind right now, my conception is that the city may or may not provide you the building and will provide you some level of funding if the council determines that that's the case, as startup funding, building funding, renovation funding through the ARPA plan, right? So there's not going to be any line item in our budget for years for building maintenance
Right.
or repairs or any of those things, right?
Unless we
That's
discuss
my
the balance
expectation.
of that project that's still in the line item. But yes,
Right.
I understand what you're saying, and I think it's important to recognize that Arts West CT doesn't like need a building or need that building or need necessarily that much space in order to fulfill Arts West CT's mission, which is to center creative expression and performance by and for the West Haven community. Since the city identified this as a priority, we can help make that happen. There's know-how that can be assembled to make that happen, and it would be a joy to contribute to. But certainly, with or without, life goes on. But the only reason I said names on a list, and I realize that came out kind of snarky, I did not mean that to at all, is that in my life as a fundraiser for Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival in the Berkshires, that's what we did, was have the funding pyramid, and you had to put the names in, so many at this higher level, and then more at the lower levels, and then a big broad base at the lower levels. I can tell you that our crowdfunding campaign got donations from $5 to $2,000, $2,500, and I love that spread. Like, I think we can hit all the points of the pyramid, or we have. And it's a matter, again, of scaling up in startup mode and pulling in the right partners who have track records. I mean, nobody's going to question, I don't think, whether the Milford Regional Chamber is capable of running a little, 20 by 30 welcome center, given its capacity. So it's not, quote unquote, just us. It's us as a facilitator, as a convener, pulling in the right partners.
I believe you and your group have the ability to do it. Again, again, this is my personal belief, but I really do think that building is an anchor around your neck to get some type of establishment set in a more timely fashion. I think that building's an anchor. Now, at the end of the day, it's going to be whatever. Yeah, I'd rather give you money and say, here you go, here's the money, and now you develop it, or develop a plan, submit it to the ARPA committee, and between you all work it out. And if that's leasing a space that's already built, right, and then you have that money for programming and rent and whatever you have it for, you have it for. But to me, I just think that building is an anchor, and that's my own personal opinion. I think you could get up and get started a lot quicker without having to worry about that building. So I'm for giving the arts community ARPA dollars.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
I just think that we're putting money in a structure when really we should be putting it into the creativity and the programming and
Agreed. I mean, not everything has to be building focused, that's for sure.
Right.
But also the not-for-profit world is slow, and much slower than the business world at times, in a way. What I mean by that is it took a lot of time to figure out exactly, when the conditions were right, what we could do there now. And starting with a new space, we'd have to, in some ways, some of the planning would be transferable, but a lot of the planning is site-specific.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my only reservation about that. And also, being on that civic axis of right behind City Hall, visualizing the green, the municipal parking lot right there. We're in a beautiful spot to talk about parking because there's no private garage competing. So if people are coming into that lot, maybe there's 10 or 12 spots that are for the Arts Center that people are actually paying for on top of their tickets. Maybe we paint those a bright, colorful color to designate those are the arts parking spaces, and it's right there. So these are all things that have to be figured out in other sites, is the parking, the approach, the customer journey, the sight lines, where are people going to see the storefront. And what often happens when funding is scarce, which it usually is the arts group gets pushed out to the Red Hook or out beyond the walkable commercial district where it can't support the restaurants. Erector Square has very few opportunities for people to walk to a Jerry's and help out a restaurant. And then, but yet they have a 6-month waiting list. So let's bring those people here where they can rent a studio and support our restaurants. I mean, there's just some things about that location. I mean, there's also a lot of difficulties,
I think there's room for more conversation.
Yes.
I just think that
Yes.
you'll get a lot more bang for your buck if you didn't have to put it into that building. You could just focus on building your program wherever you may build your
Can I
program.
tell you another building I love?
Sure.
It's much smaller. I mean, somebody's already in it. But It's the corner of First Avenue and Elm Street, right across from the Rite Aid. It used to be an architect's office, and it has almost like a gallery space, a kitchen. It's got that little courtyard in the back. You could put a tiny little triangular wooden stage and string it all up with lights. It would be beautiful. So there's possibilities. And it's in an opportunity zone. I don't know if that still matters, but it is.
Anyone else?
Eleanor, I have a question about your fundraising plan for 2023. I don't see any projected goals, how much you might be looking to raise. Have you thought about that yet?
I certainly have, and would certainly be happy to supplement that. I was just trying to kind of name drop in this first round to,
Okay.
and maybe that was a bad strategy, but yeah, the applications are out there, and the amounts kind of depend on the types of programs that we want to do, and the program depends on the space, and just wanted to have this conversation first before.
I'd be
Yeah.
interested in seeing that. I know that you're really good at that, so that would be something I'd be interested in seeing. I'm curious, what businesses in that space that you mentioned on the corner of Elm and First?
Oh, it's a temporary health aid.
It's like a nursing, like a CNA place.
I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out which one that is. Okay.
It even has a big white a white rectangle on this side of it, painted on the brick, that just looks like it's waiting for a mural or a painting. That would be right at that gateway site of driving into West Haven over
Okay.
Kimberly.
Okay.
It's a home.
What's that? Pretty much, yeah. Yes, corner of Charcoal Chicken, yes.
Just to add on to one other little thing, I'd be interested in seeing a 5-year plan. I know that's a lot to ask for. I know I'm a pain in the neck. But I'd be interested in it. Just something to think about.
Right.
I'm all set.
Sure.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Anybody else? Oh, I gotta say thank you very much for the presentation. It was very good. I'm not against the Arts Center at all, but I have to agree with Councilman Guagliani. To me, putting that amount of money in that building there is to sink in, and I hate to see that building being owned by the city also. If some months you don't make the rent or nobody rents the place, and you're gonna be coming up short trying to pay the electric bill, the oil bill, the gas bill, whatever you're gonna have for utilities, I hate to see that building become the casino, destroyed. I think I would do the same thing as give you money to start something, maybe rent a place. I understand that the old Connecticut Bank there on the opposite corner is available. I mean, somebody just bought it, but you might be able to check into that and see if you could rent that joint. It's already got a stage, because there used to be a dance studio there. But, I'm just give you an idea. But anyways, I mean,
Price just went up 50%.
And an important aspect of analyzing any further space is not just what it costs, but what the revenue generating possibilities are. So for instance, if you couldn't put those studios in there to rent separate people to have private, nice spaces, then it wouldn't be as valuable to me, even if the total bill was much less.
okay, thank you very much.
One more last thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, the money that State Representative Dorinda Bora got was specific
To that address.
for the address or the center?
For the address. The grant is for that address for an arts
Yep.
and culture and community center with economic
All right.
benefit.
Because I know
So
the council asked for that grant, but we never
Now,
got it, right?
now
We
the
never
state
received
may
that
have
money.
some leeway on the address. I mean, we know
Yeah, yeah.
that she has pull. So I mean, if she went to the Connecticut Office of the Arts and said, we want to do the same thing for this, but at this other building, I mean, I don't know. That's beyond. that's beyond. But the 1 million can be used that I'm advocating for tonight from ARPA could certainly be used to strengthen arts and culture, with or without being added to that. But if it is added to that, if we have that 1.5, we don't want to send it back. It's already for that building. It's already, enough inputs have been put in. Let's make something happen.
Yep, I agree. All right, that's it, thank you.
Anybody else? That's it. Thank you, Eleanor. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Carney.
Thank you.
You short one?
Yeah, come on.
Thank you.
I have with me tonight our attorney and our accountant. I have David Gludberg and Jack Regan, who are here to answer questions you may have. The handout that I just gave you, on page 2, I have the current project list as it stands approved. On page 3, I have the proposed project list that I had proposed about a month ago. On page 4, I have a resolution approving a project list. I had the attorney write the resolution, and it refers to attachment A. So if you were to choose one of these options tonight, or some form of one of these options, we could just say, we could use the same resolution. Just say, see attachment A. I've got a project list with a $3.5 million spend for the Art Center. I have a project list with $1 million spend for an Art Center. I have a project list with a $500,000 spend. I have a project budget to redo the building in detail. I've got the property information for 304 Center Street. I have the annual operating budget for the building. And I have examples from other towns and how they have given to 501c3s in Connecticut, compliments of UHY. I have a resolution for Child Safety, Pedestrian Safety Fund, which I'll talk about at the end. I have information that was requested on the West Haven High football field, and photos of Winslow Drive, which I'll explain in a moment. Starting with 304 Center, the building was purchased for $600,000, and the deal was that it would be delivered clean. All the abatement was done. The fact that there is no asbestos, no lead, no PCBs makes the building very, very marketable. A barrier to selling, to buying that building or using that building, most buildings, is the amount of hazardous material that you have to pull out of it. There is no hazardous material left in that building, so it's very marketable. To date, the city has spent $1.2 million over the last 16 years. Okay? That included a new roof, skylights, and the restoration of the decorative columns in the front of the building. The current value stands at $737,800. The $1.5 million from the state has never been spent, not a dime. In fact, the contract that is required to obtain the grant has never even been signed. The money is there, but there has been no signed contract between the agency giving it and the state accepting it. There are 16 parking spaces, and my understanding is the grant calls for structures in the parking lot that would reduce some of those spaces. The square footage is 14,682 square feet, and it's on 3 full floors, making it very, very costly to renovate. If you go to page 10, we value the construction at $280 a square foot, which brings us to just over $4.1 million. And we have some history that speaks to that. Approximately 12 years ago, we renovated 16,000 square feet here in City Hall. We included a new elevator, and we had asbestos work to do, and the total was $5.7 million. If you take the asbestos out, you take out the extra square footage, you factor in escalation, inflation, we feel the $280 a square foot is dead on. for the renovation. Design services, which already went out to bid, we negotiated it down to $540,000. It's a very complicated building from a code standpoint. Someone has to be hired to run the building. This can't be a volunteer operation. It's a big project. If you put money into it, someone has to be hired. We're looking at a construction manager that would go out to bid, $275,000. Contingency.
I'm sorry, could I bother you?
Yeah, sure.
What does that mean?
So what happens is
During construction or?
running the whole job during
Right.
construction,
Right.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The contingency, we put at $450,000. The grand total to renovate the building is $5,375,000. Then the building is empty. FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment, we're estimating at $300,000 on top of the 5.3. So now you say, okay, how can we reduce that cost? Let's do one floor. So we do one floor. How do you insulate one floor? You can't just not insulate your ceiling. How do you not put sprinklers on the upper floors? Code does not allow for you to only sprinkle part of a building. So you would have to put sprinklers throughout the entire building, basement, all the floors, and you'd have to insulate the upper floors to keep your one floor from freezing. You can't insulate the ceiling because the joists are not big enough. You can't get your R value. The entire building. And you can't insulate unless you do electrical. So now you're in a situation where you have to literally address every floor with electrical insulation in order to use one floor. That leaves you 4,800 square feet. The plan that Eleanor presented has some good value, but the rental doesn't work out because code is not going to let you, from an egress standpoint, rent little sections of one floor. They may let you rent the whole floor because you have egress, but you can't put 6 parties on one floor and say, this is your space, that's your space over there, because fire code won't allow it. That revenue is not going to come in rental. If you had a larger building on one floor, then you could break it up because the space allows you to do that. You're talking 4,800 square feet for one floor. By the time you put in your stairs, your elevator, your storage areas, if you do a kitchen or not do a kitchen, you don't have much left. The building does not lend itself to this type of activity. It was a wrong purpose from the beginning. I don't believe that the building can support itself. If you go to the budget, which is on page 14, this is a conservative budget. We have a janitorial expense of $900 a month. I think that's low. That's $46,800 a year. There's got to be some landscaping on the outside of the building. There's got to be snow removal. That's about $8,000 a year between landscaping and snow removal. Sprinkler service inspections. Code requires they be inspected every quarter. It's a general assembly. They're very strict on that. That's $2,800 a year. Fire alarm monitoring, $1,400 a year. Fire extinguisher service, $400 a year. Exterminating, $1,600 a year. HVAC maintenance, filters, tune-ups, all that stuff, $1,500 a year. Property insurance, I didn't even include. I don't know who's going to insure the building. Is the city going to pay for that? Is a private entity going to pay for it? Tenant insurance would have to be brought in. Electricity, I'm thinking with today's rate, $19,400 a year. Gas, $5,400 a year. Water, $2,800 a year. Garbage and recycling, $7,200 a year. Communications, phones, internet, $6,600 a year. General maintenance, $18,000 a year. I think it's low. Reserve for capital, $7,000 a year. Elevator service, which is quarterly inspections, $136,000 a year. That's $11,300 a month to run this building. The building is way worse than an anchor. It is literally a 501c3 killer. It is an unaffordable building that cannot support itself. That's my concern.
Any good news there?
The good news is there are other buildings around town, and there are other options to fund those buildings. That building could be sold. That money could go wherever you deem it should go. But that particular building would cost north of $5 million to remodel, $12,000, $11,300 to $12,000 a month to maintain. You're gonna lose half your parking, and you can't rent it out the way you want to because it's too broken up. That's the problem in that building.
Okay, what other buildings, you said that were wrong, what other buildings available?
Point of order. If we're gonna talk about potential real estate, I don't think we should do it in open session.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do I have a chance to address any of the things that Mr. Pine brought up, or? With additional
Well, it's not a
information?
debate, really. We're just getting
No, just
information.
additional information, because I said, I misspoke when I said rent, because I just used that to simplify it. It should have been a licensing fee, because what we did in Project Storefronts was, we didn't have like leases and rents, we did license to use the space, and that spelled out the terms, so it's not like, legally it's different, and the city of New Haven had the same issues that Mr. Carney's talking about, and that's the solution that they used, so, thank you.
The building is not ADA compliant, code bans that. Literally, a berm would have to be removed to bring in a ramp to get to the basement and the first floor. That's not even figured in the $280 a square foot. And then the maintenance on the building, you know, it's an old building, even rebuilt, it requires a lot of maintenance. And what happens around here is when the city is involved in these types of buildings, they fall apart. They don't last very long. If you look at the current project list on page 2, this is where we are today. I've moved up the $350,000 that you approved for the homeless program. I researched that program. I sat with Doug and some other people, and that makes total sense to me. I think it's a great move, and it looks like you approved it already, so I've got that in there. If you go to page 3, this is the proposal that I had made about a month back, and what I had done is I had taken projects off the bonding list, and I've tried to reduce operations in city departments. And I felt that was the absolute best option for the taxpayer. This page speaks to that. Now, if you look, in this plan, it has no arts money, but it shows a little over $9 million in the $10 million bucket, and that's the revenue loss bucket. So as we go through these different options, you'll see that how that moves. In fact, go to page, go to page 7. Here, this proposes a $3.5 million spend for arts. Look what happens to the $10 million revenue source. It shoots up to $12,697,000, and your contingency drops to negative $3 million, which means you have to pull out $3 million in projects, and you have to pull out, and 2.6 million of that has to come out of the 10 million. The ARPA money may offer funds for the arts, and I believe that's true. It doesn't offer funds to redo a building for the arts. The $10 million discretionary fund would allow that, but it's capped at 10 million. So any money you put towards a building goes in that revenue fund, and you have to take out the equivalent of other projects so we don't go over. Otherwise, ARPA won't cover it. If you turn the page again, go to page 8. Here we show $1 million spend for the arts. And now we get a little bit closer. We have $10,197,000 in the discretionary fund, so we're over $200,000. And our contingency goes to minus $550. So you'd have to find $700,000 on this sheet to pull out of here in order to make the numbers work, the budget work. If you turn the page and go to page 9, here we get fairly close. We show a $500,000 spend on the arts. Our $10 million residual fund goes down to $9.7 million, so we have $300,000 to still play with that. Our contingency goes to minus $46,000, so we'd have to find roughly $50,000 somewhere else, or more if you wanted your contingency to be larger. And that's where we're at. Now, if you consider what other towns have done, and you go to page 15, Other municipalities have been asked to fund 501c3s, and what they've done, in this case is an example from Bristol, is they've put money aside and did a matching like for like. You raise $100, we give you $100 out of the fund. You raise $200,000, we give you $200,000 out of the fund. That's how some other towns are handling it. I don't see a financial path, arts aside for a moment, of any 501c3 making it in that building because of how much work it needs, how much maintenance it requires, and the layout. The layout is detrimental to a 501c3. It's broken up in 3 floors. You need elevators, you need sprinklers, you don't have enough room on each floor. That's the problem.
Anybody have any questions? I got one thing, Ken. I'm going to start with something. You got down here, you mentioned last time you were here, storage sheds for the police department. I'm pretty sure the council agreed for carports, and they were supposed to put solar on top of it for the police department a while ago, and nothing's been done about that. So why are we giving them a storage shed?
So, my understanding is a carport, I'm not familiar with that budget or that project, but a carport will allow cars to be parked without having to remove snow, right? So the cars last longer, you're not wasting manpower. What's unique about that particular project is it doesn't fall under the discretionary fund. We're making the claim that if we build an unheated, unconditioned storage facility for the police department, we allow them to park their mobile command center in there. They're in charge of all these signs that are just sitting outside rotting. That goes in there. Equipment goes in there. It opens the actual PD up to more space without actually building an addition. And we can make the argument that that falls under ARPA funds without touching the discretionary fund. And that's a $275,000 spend. If you were to approve that, that's what it would be for, a Butler-type building behind the police station that solves those problems. And it doesn't touch the 10 million.
Would it be cheaper to rent the storage shed and put all the signs in a storage place?
Well, you know, it would, but you're using your money to do that. If you build it, you're not paying any rent, and you're using federal money to do that. The goal is to reduce the operations budget, not increase it. It would be cheaper in the short term, but not in the long term.
Anybody else? Thanks, Ken.
So Ken, I for a long, long time, I think our history dictates that we make decisions on best guesses, right? So we've gotten a lot of information. We've gotten Eleanor's proposal here. I've learned some things about that tonight. We've got your information. I think, in my mind, the only thing that's missing for me to compare if it makes sense to do something with that building on Center Street or not is what will the market bear for that? You told me it's appraised at 7 change or whatever, but I think I'd like it to go hit the street and see if there's any interest in it.
That's up to you guys. It's your building. I think that my understanding is, you know, if you decide to do that, it comes from the council. You sell, you know, property that the city owns. My guess is it would be a pretty good return because of the fact that it's already gutted. And I think a commercial operation that would be taxable would go in there.
So why would we do that? Why wouldn't your committee do that? Because it's one of the mayor's proposed projects is the art center, right? So if we're-
Yeah, we're in charge of the ARPA funds, but not city property. If you tell the ARPA committee to put money in the city property, we would run that. But the actual city property is owned by the city, and I believe the council, like a school, would have to vote to sell that property. That's beyond our ability or charge.
I think that's important piece of information for me. Again, I'm committed to giving dollars to the arts. And again, I don't know if it's that building, and if the market will bear it and somebody wants to bid a good piece of change, maybe there's a piece of that sale that we put towards the arts. I don't know, but I think that, for me, that's the piece that's missing here. I mean, you went through what the potential monthly costs are, you went through what the potential construction cost is, but I don't really know at the end of it. It just pains me to think that we already put $1.2 million into that building, and, you know, we're having this conversation in 2023, and that building's been sitting here since when?
2005. But if I could offer, you know, response to that strictly from a financial standpoint, so money that went into that building was not local taxpayer money. It was somebody's taxpayer money, obviously, but not our money. No matter what you sold the building for, the return would be immediate because it would go on the tax rolls. And sometimes that's the best deal.
Yeah, and I don't have an opinion one way or another on whether we should sell the building or not, but I think it'd be valuable to have that data.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, John. Yeah, come on.
Good evening, Jack Regan with UHY. Just one thing I want to remind the committee of as you are evaluating all of this, this process is exactly what other communities are going through, so I commend the council for the diligence that it's taking on this. Just as a reminder of some of the dates that are out there that we have to keep in mind with anything ARPA related. We have to have contracts in place by 12/31/24, obligating those funds to be spent, and they have to be spent out by 12/31/26. And the reason that I bring that up is that if you're talking about construction like this and design build, you know, as we're talking here, you go out for the RFP for the design piece. That's going to take a couple of months. Then you have to make the decision on what that looks like. And then once you have the design in place, you'll have to bid out the construction pieces, which take another couple of months. So optimistically, you're talking later in 23 or early in 24 before that process begins. And that narrows this window of time that you've got to make sure those funds are committed. And the things I want to remind the committee is, or the council, excuse me, is that if for some reason things go out into 2025 and there's a change order request and all that, you can't go back and get ARPA for that, because at 12/31/24, all the ARPA spending plans are, my words, frozen because of the way the law is currently written. All right? I think it's more likely than not things over the next 2 years are going to get more restrictive on ARPA, given the politics down in DC that are going on. So I want committee to be aware of these time constraints, or excuse me, the council, I keep saying committee because I'm used to talking to him, of the time constraints that are out there around this as you're doing your due diligence on the evaluation of this and other proposals that are coming in front of you. Thank you.
I mean, I understand that, and I appreciate that, and that goes back to me saying to myself, geez, realistically, if we had to build this building, the arts community is not gonna have a facility to call their own in West Haven until 25 or 26, where, you know,
2 years.
if we give designate funds for them and you and whoever to identify a location, a program, you'd be up and running, you know, an existing building would be up and running long before 25 or 26. So that's, again, that's what I struggle with. But I think I'd like that. You can't help me with it, Ken, but I think I'll ask, you know, whatever our normal procurement process is to get that data. So, thank you.
Some other deadlines looming. If you decide to fund the fields at the high school, we're running out of time. Getting material in for the summer is going to be difficult if you guys don't, if the council does not approve that soon. The boilers at Kerrigan, I've not been able to secure or pay an engineer because I have no funds. I'm waiting for it to be bonded. If the council chooses to pay for some of that with ARPA funds, I can start that process a lot sooner. In March is gonna be about a year that we started talking about this plan. And we still have about $8 million uncommitted, and there's a lot of need in the community. And the need that we identified will lower taxes and lower operation costs.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Ken, just to put a different spin on perspective here, what, because you do this stuff for a living, what is your current analysis on supply and demand when we're talking about renovations of, well, this magnitude?
Right now, we have buildings that are stalled because you cannot get the electrical equipment to put in the building. They're talking a year out just to get the electrical boxes. The meter cans and all that stuff, 400 amp, 200 amp, it's a real problem. And the other thing is towns are starting to wake up and they're starting to spend their money. And now that it's getting harder and harder to get vendors, I put out to bid a walkthrough for the 3 rooms for cameras. One person showed up and he said, I'm not really qualified for this job. I'm going back out to bid. So that's what's happening, and nobody wants to be a part of giving this money back.
You all set?
Yes, thank you.
Well, my personal opinion on this here is I'm gonna get most of this done because it's dragging and dragging and dragging. And I'm telling you right now, we have to make some kind of decision on some of these projects that get started on and get them done. Because we also got a budget to contend to, and I'm be honest with you, I don't have the time, or maybe somebody else might have the time, to have more of these meetings, special meetings. We gotta get some of this stuff done. Or we're gonna end up giving the money back, and that's a shame. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, of course, I'm beating the drum too, like Ronnie says all the time. This should have been all infrastructure money. We wouldn't have this problem, because it would be, every taxpayer would benefit by it, because it would bring the city back up the way it was, paving, different things that had to be done within the city itself. But now that we got these things in front of us, these projects, we got to do something. We can't just sit here and keep getting information, and Kenny's committee's doing it, and we're just sitting here with our fingers in our mouths, not doing nothing, sucking on our thumbs. I mean, we got to start doing some of these projects. So I'm asking the council members to, at least if you want to get some of this stuff done, let's get some of it and hold off some of the stuff. So, I mean, there's about 4 or 5 items I would hold off yet because I'm not too keen on doing it. But some of the other stuff, let's get started on it. Let's, that we know we could save the taxpayers money on bonding for not to raise taxes next year, to do the boilers at Kerrigan, let's start those. If we could save money for the taxpayers on any kind of bonding, I would say we should take into consideration of starting the project. At least we know that money is going for something good. And to fix the boilers at school, it's for every taxpayer to benefit by it, for their children to go to school there. So, I mean, personally, that's the way I feel. I mean, you all can feel a different way, fine with me, but that's my opinion. Anybody else got anything to say?
No, I mean, my only comment is I'd like to talk to the finance director about bonding and what his anticipation is for bonding. I get it. I'm the first one that said we should look at projects that are on the bonding list, so we don't have to transfer that and make that potentially affect the mill rate. But at the end of the day, I know that there's bonding that fell off. So I think I need a little bit more information on where the bonding level is, what's permitted, and because there's some big projects here that if we move those big projects, other projects by default will get boxed out, and I'm not sure that I'm ready to do that.
I spoke to the finance director the other day. He has anticipation. he's putting together his bonding list, anticipation of ARPA funds being used for the Kerrigan and the Fields. He's proposing they come off the bonding list. And he's using phrases like debt diet. Is what I'm hearing.
And I'd like to see what his proposed project list is.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
May I? Ken, since we're on the topic, could you fill us in on the latest, you kind of just said it, where we stand calendar year-wise with regards to the fields and how much time constraint there is on that project if we do move on that?
So if you go to page, I guess page 20, I have a Castle and Booze field study attached. And it doesn't take a lot of knowledge about fields to understand the problems that we're having down there. The field is disintegrating. The fill under the field is not suitable for drainage. And in the report, he shows you what suitable drainage fill looks like and what we have. We have a track that we cannot use, and we have a softball field that we can use periodically because it floods. What's nice about that project is it doesn't consume dollars in the $10 million bucket. It's approved by ARPA funds. We are getting to a point now that we're not gonna be able to start this when school gets out. Literally, last time we did this, which was 12 years ago, they came and they started the day after school got out. That's how close, and they gave it to us a week before school was delivered. This is a bigger project. No material's been ordered. It's fully designed. It's ready to go. We need a funding source. And this is well suited for ARPA funding. And it will not be bonded if it comes from ARPA.
I'm all set, Chairman, thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
No?
I would like to see the Savin Rock Playscape and Groundscape move forward, so I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the Savin Rock Playscape and Groundscape.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion,
Any discussion?
discussion.
Yes.
There's a lot of schools on here, a lot of things that involve children. I kind of want to see it prioritized before I'm able to
Well, we
say
could
yea
add-
or nay.
We could add more on it and just
'Cause
do that
there's-
one resolution.
This one is only.
Boilers, there's, kids freezing.
Mr. Chairman, this one is only $54,000. It's not $2.1 million.
Ken, if you don't, yeah, 54,000 for that. What is that?
So what it
That's
does-
eliminating
it-
what's
it-
there now, right?
No, what it does is it fixes the playscape that's there with a new slide. And we put down a new base because we have a little sinkhole problem over there and it took out the old base. So we put a new base down, which is safe for kids. And then, so more kids can enjoy the activities, because the swing set and the slide is very limited, we want to do what we did at Haley and Forest. And we want to do a groundscape. And the groundscape is a painted feature with numerous games, a track, a bridge, a 3D bridge that goes over, a river. And in speaking with the administrators over there, they think they'll get way more use out of that than they will the existing repaired playscape. So 54,000 does both of those things for us.
So are the playscapes that bad where,
No, playscape's only 6 years old. What happened was, there was vandalism to the slide. That's gotta be replaced. And we had a rubber base down, and what's happening is water's percolating up, and we can't save the rubber base. So we're going back to a chip type material that is rated and safe for kids who doing playscape. That'll solve that problem. It drains on its own, it would be no more issue. We're also putting the groundscape in a shaded area. One of the problems over there is there's no trees, so when the kids go out, you know, on a hot day becomes a problem. By putting it in the shaded area, we think that we will get a lot more activity, a lot more use.
So you're gonna put it in that little eave under the building type of thing, or?
Well, the whole side of the building during school is shaded, so it's a huge area.
Okay.
This is like 100 by 40 feet. This is pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the funding source for the other two schools' groundscapes?
We did ESSER funds.
And this one wasn't on the radar back then?
No, it's, so up at Haley, I'm sorry, Forest School, the playscape was funded from DEEP. Then, about a year later, we have a classroom with special needs students that come out to an area closed in with brick, a brick knee wall. We repaved that for them, and we drew these games for these children, for learning, if you will. That was very successful, and Haley asked for the same thing. We did paving and groundscape at Haley, and then we spent all the ESSER funds. That was the end of the ESSER funds. Forest now, Savin Rock now has seen that, and their principal's asking, he has a need as well, and he's asking for the same thing to be done.
And when would that project be done? In the summer?
I would start that, the slide could be done fairly quickly, and I would start that as probably March, April, with the paints.
Can the Seth Haley School ADA ramp,
Mhm.
I personally took a look at that. Isn't that to the point where it's unsafe?
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's falling down.
I'm waiting for a call from the fire marshal. It's a
Yeah.
nightmare. I gotta replace that thing.
So-
I need $100,000. I can tear it apart and build a new one. It's a problem.
Mr. Chairman, if you would, when you mentioned earlier about the carports, I'd like to just mention to you that the carports were done through a grant with Doug Coulter, where it's gonna be, the things on the top for energy. The building here that's in question, the storage shed for the police department, the fact of that is that the sally ports are full. So when they pull up to the back of the police department, they have to walk the prisoners in from outside in the building 9 out of 10 times because they're full of impounded mopeds or motorcycles or stolen items so the need for that is there. So I just want to mention that on the record.
And that's part of the bonding, we gotta wait for the bonding, see what's up with the bonding on that. That's one of the projects we wanna probably hold.
So we have a motion on the floor, so.
May I add one more thing?
Yes.
One more thing?
Thank you.
The mulch at Savin Rock School is terrible. It's totally indented. The kids are tripping. I walked it myself. My feet were sinking into it. My heels were getting stuck. It's really awful. It's terrible. I don't know why we haven't fixed it yet, and that's why I'm advocating for it today, because I really want to see the kids have something safe there. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I understand what you're saying, but also what I was trying to bring out, and what Councilman Hamilton was bringing out, there's other things on there we could add to your motion
Okay.
to get done, not only one item at a time.
Okay.
Because like Mr. Carney said, the resolution, we could put 3 or 4 things on,
Okay.
it covers all 3 of them.
Okay.
So if anybody else wants to add something onto that to
Okay.
get it started, you can. And we
To another motion, you mean?
make one motion and add these things on.
So, in addition to your motion, I would like to add the Haley School ADA ramp rebuild.
Well, yeah, wait a minute now.
Is it? Well, that-
Wait, if we're gonna do that,
Yeah,
we're gonna need to amend her motion to add each additional
So-
thing on.
that's what I'm saying, instead of
Is-
that,
is
what,
that-
Mr. Chairman,
I just
can we
wanna
just do
just-
one at a time?
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to just check with
That'd be easier.
I think it
Ken,
would be easier.
Run down the list and do one at a
what Ken
time.
and the attorney, how they feel about that, because I'm gonna be winging it with your regular, resolution in here, and I'm just gonna be adding in the parts of the projects with the amounts. It might be
Yeah.
easier for I don't really, it doesn't matter to me, but I just wanna make sure from however you guys want it to be done.
Want to do one at a time, we'll do one at a time, make it
Yeah.
easier for you.
One at a time would be easier.
I don't care either way, just wanna know which way
Page 9,
we're doing
right?
it
Oh,
is
you're on
fine.
7.
We'll do one,
We're all in agreement doing one at a time?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Fine, it'll, we just redraft it.
Otherwise, we have to keep amending the motions and it just, right? If we're
Our
gonna
motion,
keep
if you do it one at a time and you get most of these in, we will use the motion we have, just
Just
the way
keep-
it's written, yeah, just keep going.
I don't necessarily have to keep reading that whole long
No,
thing,
no.
we could just, right?
One motion.
Yes, that's fine.
Well-
We can adapt to whatever the council decides.
Yeah.
is
It'll
the
be
appropriate way to
multiple,
proceed.
because for my records, I still need multiple resolutions.
Yep.
So there'll be multiple motions. I just won't necessarily, I don't believe I'll need to read them all into the
No.
record,
No, they're all the same,
because they're all the same.
correct.
I'll just read the brief part about what the project is and the dollar amount.
And
on
I'm looking
each
at
one.
page 9 as the, if everybody's on page 9, this is the version with the $500,000 for the arts, And I have P1 through P12. So I think you have an active motion right now for
So we have
P3.
we have an active motion on here for, let's just find it.
Salmon Rod, playscaping,
Which number is it?
P03,
P3.
P03?
Who seconded?
yes.
We had it seconded by,
I
Councilwoman
seconded.
O'Connor,
I still have discussion.
so,
Yes,
If I
Mr.
could.
Holden.
So, somebody's gonna have to keep a running track, because if for some
That's
reason the
right.
council's will to approve all these projects, then you're gonna run out of money. So, without taking away from other projects, right?
That's right.
So, somebody's gonna have to keep track
Yeah.
of where we're at.
which pot these are going into, I know exactly what you mean.
So your circuit breaker could be the 1,350,000 for the paving. If you approve all these projects, you're gonna be short roughly $46,000. You could pull it out of that paving bucket fairly easily without ruining a whole project.
And what does that do to the library and the arts
They
money?
stay, the arts would stay in for $500,000, the library would stay in for $1 million.
$500,000.
Yeah. In this rendition. If you go back to the previous page, then there's $1 million and there's a $3.5 million for the arts.
You have here $1 million on that page.
Yeah.
It says,
Page 9 is $1 million?
Yep,
Page-
for the
No.
library.
No,
It's a $500,000, no, library site development, $1 million, what is that?
that's not the arts, that's the library.
No, I said the library.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, library stay, I haven't touched that.
That doesn't change.
Right, well, I thought you said the library gets $500,000 too.
No, the arts center, the arts program.
Well, necessarily, we don't have to approve all these items, we could approve a few,
Yes.
so we don't run out.
You guys could spend some money tonight and get some problems solved. Yes, you could. Go ahead.
mean,
Sorry.
really. Got 8. I count.
Good luck.
Until we-
Move the motion, please.
Do you wanna do a roll call?
Want to do a roll
Yes.
call?
Oh, so we had the point with the roll call?
You all done with discussion on that?
Yeah.
So, we're just voting on the Seven Rock Playscape right now? Okay,
For
I'm good then.
$54,000. We're ready for the roll call?
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Councilman Gary Donovan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galagnano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Want Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Yes.
and Chairman Peter Massaro.
Yes,
Okay, that motion.
motion passes
Passes.
unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, could we put on Haley School next, please?
I didn't hear you,
Just
what'd you
give me
say?
1 second.
Haley School,
Haley's
Make a
School.
motion.
So,
make a motion.
so just one quick second. Do you want me to read them after they're?
No.
How do you want me to do the reading of the resolutions? Because we usually read them into the record. I don't know how we want to do that. Or do we just?
We're gonna make page 9 your record tonight. That'll be your record. I brought extra copies for you. And I think if you just state the project that was approved, then we could wrap it up under the one motion we have,
And
under
then
the one resolution we have. If the following were approved.
All right, and I'll just do the individual
Yeah.
ones for our records as each one is approved. Okay,
Okay, Robert.
all right, so what,
I'd like to make a motion for Haley School ramp rebuild, the fact that it's unsafe for the children up there. I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
for, let's,
Okay, I'm sorry, P01,
yeah, P 01 in the amount of,
100,000.
okay, and who seconded that?
I did.
Steve and Gary.
Okay. Okay,
Any discussion? Have a roll call.
okay. Councilman Gary Donovan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Yes.
and Chairman Peter Massaro.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman.
I'd like to make a motion to, for P7 with the Carrigan boilers and the, repiping of the entire school that's been on the table for a very long time and it affects all the children citywide.
Second.
And that's in the amount of 2.1 million. Am I
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I didn't know if we were, I'm not saying I'm against it, I
No,
just
it's
didn't know if
okay.
we were waiting
You
for the
are.
bonding report or what that,
This will come off the bonding if you approve it.
yeah. I'm talking with Mr. Jackson,
What I'm afraid is that it'll never get done. We'll keep on pushing it to the side, pushing it to the side. We've been talking about this for a very long time.
Yes.
Ken, what would the timetable like for the boilers look like roughly? Would that be done by next winter?
Yes, I need, if I pull the trigger on the design professional, went out to bid already, he's just waiting for a contract. It's gonna take him 3 to 4 months to evaluate all the options, and then we put it out to bid for construction.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, you answered. That's the question I was gonna ask. Any other discussion? No, take a roll call, vote.
Councilman Gary Donovan,
yes.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Yes.
and Chairman Peter Massaro.
Yes.
Okay.
This is unanimous. Yes, Councilman Quagliani.
I think to wrap up, what I determined is probably the last imminent safety issue would be P11, emergency bleacher repairs at Veterans Field. I'd like to make a motion to approve that for $60,000.
Any discussion? Okay, when you're ready, we'll take a roll call vote on that.
Councilman Gary Donovan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone?
Yes.
And Chairman Peter Massaro.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously.
That's what, I just needed agreement.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Ken another question? Ken, as I'm sitting here thinking about the athletic fields, and I know this is like the elephant in the room now that we just passed the other ones here. What is in your professional opinion, what is the absolute cutoff? We have to make a decision on that. Because it is February 1st here.
It is off the bonding list, I can tell you that. Scott Jackson told me it's no longer on the bonding list. We are really at that point now. We can't do this work anytime in September. In fact, if you approve this, because there's two different fields, we might be able to play with the softball field and do that when baseball is not in session, but the football field, they're on every day, different sports. We really need, and remember, that money was given back from the Board of Ed to the city account, the general account. You know, we're asking to do what we intended to do all along. I can't wait another meeting. They're gonna tell me there's no material. That's what it comes down to.
I'm all set, Chairman, thank you.
So, I didn't understand that. You said the football field that you can't do this year started?
No, I'm
if we
saying,
passed it?
if I'm saying that there's three fields, right? The track and the football field are together. The baseball field is, the softball field's alone. What I could do now is I could do the football field, the track, and then while school's in session, I could do the softball field. I can't do that to the football field. That's the problem.
Ken, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I ask something? Ken, you've done, there was a lot of questions about this after your last presentation. You, like everything, the safety of the athletes on this field, like all that's been dissected to the fullest extent?
Yes, sir, 100%. This is the second time that I've put the field down. I did Veterans Field also. I have the very best engineers in the business with their testing, with their design. This is a great project, and it's shovel-ready. It's ready to
What
go.
did you say the life expectancy would this be?
The old turf was 10 years.
Mhm.
We're coming up on 13.
Yep.
And we're having some issues with the new drainage. We should get 12 to 13 out of the new one.
Go ahead, sir, thank you.
Ken, for the old field, is that regular waste disposal, or do you have to do something special?
Regular waste disposal.
And does CIAC still approve the use of
Crumb
these
rubber.
type of
Yeah.
fields?
Mhm. Yeah, I think I may have sent the council a report.
You did.
Yeah, so, listen, you always hear controversy. You can go to page 26 of Google and hear the whole different story. But the reality of it is that these fields are being put in all over the country. We have no problem with the field that we have now, other than it's past its lifespan. Veterans Field does not pose a problem, that's in very good shape. The school needs new fields. It needs a new football field and a new track. The track's unusable.
I'm sorry.
You all set there?
Oh, yeah, I'm not.
Can we salvage that AstroTurf? The artificial grass at the field when they tear it up? And possibly use it somewhere else?
The answer is probably not. It gets disposed of. If you try to salvage it, you can't just lay it on the ground. You have to pay to do the sub-drainage, all of the fill, the curbing. It's a big process. So you wouldn't spend all that money on an old field that is beyond its lifespan. If someone wanted, a bocce court, for example, a city bocce court, you could do that, but not a field.
It wouldn't be, right, it wouldn't be for humans, let's say, is where I'm thinking.
The answer is yes, and we have talked about that.
Okay.
Yes. That we can guarantee.
And not aliens either, by the way, sorry.
Well, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Councilman Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to allocate $2.5 million under the ARPA funds under P-02 to be allocated to the West Haven High School turf field and track restoration.
I hear a second.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Take a roll call vote. P2.
Councilman Gary Donovan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Yes.
and Chairman Peter Massaro.
That's a yes. That's a unanimous one. Chairman? Yes, Councilman.
So, just for me personally, I think we've passed a significant amount of money and projects this evening. I think I need to do a little bit more due diligence on the rest of the list. I do want to make a motion that the city puts out whatever the address on Center Street, the Art Center is, for bids for sale, and the purpose of just gauging market interest on what that building will bear. And hopefully we can get that data back within the next 4 weeks, and we could have another discussion regarding the Arts Center versus allocating money to the arts community.
Second.
For discussion?
Any discussion?
And I do appreciate that. I just was hoping that maybe we get that, the paving and the ADA as well, because we need to get that going as well, I believe, shortly, or no? Could that
So
hold, could
there's
that wait?
There's an existing contract. My understanding is we're paying older prices, which
Right.
are less expensive. I don't know the time frame for that, but they probably start when the plant's open in late March.
Mhm.
That's my guess.
So that's why I didn't know if we wanted to look into that one, or we want to wait. I know you had a motion on the other thing, so.
Was that the one that you said we could take money from and not mess up anything?
Yes, I'm suggesting that might be a circuit breaker because, there's not a big difference between $1 million in paving and $1.3 million. But if you take money out of another project, the project collapses and the money has to go into contingency.
So then if we could take the 3 out of it without it collapsing, maybe we should hold off. That's on the vote on it to see how everything else is adding up. Like, you said we don't have to vote on that today because we can still get the asphalt to
I
pave.
think you may have a little time in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
If I
Right,
may
so we have the
suggest,
time.
though, P4 is a major issue for us. The roof has been designed, we've paid the architect, we cannot go out to bid because we have to engineer the new HVAC. If we pull the HVAC off the roof, it will not survive reinstallation, it's 23 years old. In the absence of the council approving that 265, that project's dead in the water.
And this will help the seniors with the,
The whole building.
The whole building.
Yeah.
I was gonna make that motion.
Ken, who was the architect on the original project that didn't catch that?
Well, no, what happened was Antonazzi went up there to do his evaluation, and he's the one that caught it, and we confirmed it. One of the problems that we've had recently is we award an architect a job, the contract goes on for 5 months, nothing happens. With all the stuff Marb's making us put in, the fact that you're short in City Hall manpower, it takes, 5-6 months. We finally, we got U8, we got Carmody involved now, and they're going faster, but it was a problem. They noticed it. They went up there
So
and.
it was identified after the budget was allocated?
Correct, yes, sir.
The number?
Yes, sir. 100%.
And if we approve that, it doesn't affect any other contributions to the programs that are still part of the mayor's proposed plan, but yet
No.
not approved by us, right?
Not at all. In fact, to be clear, if you approved P1 through P12, you would only be short $46,000. So you're safe.
On what page?
Page 9.
9.
Page 9. That's not giving us 100,000.
Yeah.
Just so the council know, we are at 4.814 that we already okayed tonight. 4.814 million, sorry.
So we have a motion on the floor that
Yeah.
we haven't voted on yet.
It's the motion to, about
But
the Art Center, right?
right? I don't know if you want a roll call
No.
on that, or?
No, you had a motion before, I didn't make the motion.
No,
I just had a discussion, you made a motion
Yeah.
about
Ron made,
hold it.
yeah,
If
but.
there's no other discussion, you could just call the vote, I guess, roll call vote.
What was the,
What
I'm
was
sorry,
the-
what was the motion?
What was the
The
motion?
motion is for us to put out to bid the Art Center building to get some data to see what the market will bear.
Okay, roll call.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Councilman Johnstone seconded it,
Yes.
so. I'll roll call this. Councilman Gary Donovan,
Yeah,
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman
For
Ronald
data's
Quagliani,
Yes.
only.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno.
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone.
Yes.
And Chairman Peter Massaro.
Yes.
And just for clarification, no city piece of property could be sold unless it comes to this council. There's a public hearing, it goes to the committee, and the committee votes on it. So this is strictly to get a number. Just wanted to be clear.
Yes.
Make a motion on the floor for P04 for HVAC on Lowell Community Center rooftop units. I got a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Discussion, we'll have a roll call vote on that.
And that would be in the amount of $265,000, just for the record.
265.
$265,000, correct?
Yes.
Councilman Gary Donovan,
yes.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Yes.
and Chairman Peter Massaro.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just offer one more piece of information. OSHA has cited the city of West Haven because they're using the extension cords to provide GFI outlets at the compost site. The City Hall main breaker testing is required to be done every 10 years. It was last done in 2011. It requires a specialist, an inspector, and a long weekend. That's $12,000. Replacement of the main breaker at the senior center is imminent. The breaker is frozen in the on position and cannot be shut off. If we do it before there's an emergency, it's a $10,000 bill. If we wait, it'll be $40,000. College Street main garage service is salt and water corroded and must be replaced. $20,000. The animal shelter does not have an outlet for a generator switch. There's a price out there, a budget number of $8,000. There's an upgrade that needs to be done to manage the block heater loads on the trucks of $40,000 at College Street. What I'm suggesting is the council consider the $100,000 in electrical work. That's where it would go.
That 100,000 will cover all them items?
It would.
You're saying,
Go ahead.
you're saying that at the dog pound, there's no, so what happens if the power goes out? There's no generator back up there or nothing?
That's what I'm being told.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else.
I'll make a motion to-
I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve P06, electrical main breakers in Circuit City buildings for $100,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. P06. Grant.
Councilman Gary Donovan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Millie Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton,
I suppose. Yes.
Councilman Robert Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Yes.
and Chairman Peter Massaro.
Yes, for the dogs.
That's gonna be it for tonight.
Okay.
Shit for tonight.
To adjourn.
We spend enough money.
Yeah.
Was that made by, you, and seconded by you?
Second by Kaufman.
If I may, well, there's a lull, I've been keeping the running tally. So I started with the 19,600.
We are.
That's on the total approved line with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 projects. You're up to 24,779 and change.
Which leaves us about $5 million.
Leaves 4,250, somewhere in that range.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Do you want the attorney to just put it in a motion
What?
using this paperwork?
Resolution?
That's right, I already have that. So, yeah, instead of doing an attachment A, I rather would have them listed all out, maybe, on the individual ones, or,
It just reference, I mean, I've got the numbers that are approved, it's 01 to 04. 06 and
Not been spent, no, there haven't been 24 million spent.
Send you first thing tomorrow morning, a revised list, and we've got, I mean, since we had a bunch of.